Welcome to Beyond the Breakwater, where just beyond the crashing waves of fear, discomfort, and doubt lies the greatest potential for life transformation. We want to guide you into the open waters where the calculated risk you take becomes the turning point for you or your organization to thrive. So draw up your anchors and prepare for departure in this week's episode of Beyond the Breakwater. So welcome back to another episode of Beyond the Breakwater. I'm here with Ed and I'm Lyndsay, and today we are joined by a very special guest, Jim Pearl. So welcome, Jim.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, we're really excited that you're here. You've kind of been with us this whole entire time, like from the beginning of this podcast being started. You were our very first guest coming up after listening. I remember it was you and Matt, right? You came for a visit. Mm-hmm. So we've mentioned this on the podcast before, but we host monthly workshops. And so Jim was part of that first group. And we just wanted to have Jim on today to kind of share what it is like and to be a part of a church and a community and serving your community. So I guess first, Jim, just kind of give the listeners an understanding of who you are, like what your background is in and what you're doing.
Sure. I'm the pastor at St. John's Lutheran Church in St. John's, Michigan. We're a small place. We worship about 140 people every weekend. I've been there almost 5 years. Interesting journey to the Lutheran ministry. I was a Catholic for 56 years and been a Lutheran pastor now for about 5 years. God's been good and opened a lot of different doors, and we just keep walking through them. So.
And you've had like a history in social justice ministry of
yes,
sorts, right?
I worked in the nonprofit arena for about 20 years around basic needs and also opportunities for people with different challenges. I ran an organization for a few years that did recreation opportunities for people with disabilities, but a lot of the work has been around basic needs.
Okay. Yeah, so I remember when I first met you, I remember hearing you say that. I'm like, okay, this is kind of already a part of your DNA and like
For
what
sure.
you're passionate about.
Sure,
So,
service is
yeah.
part of my DNA.
Why do you think that is important?
It's very important. I learned it as a young kid. My parents were both givers and very involved in the church and in the community. I can't preach like Billy Graham. I'm not the greatest at like biblical exegesis, but I can serve my butt off. So I can. Yeah.
Another great quote from Jim.
There have been some off-air quotes from Jim that were like, okay, we're going to have a lot of titles to work with here. Yeah, that's really great. So kind of, I guess, give a brief overview, and then I kind of want to dive in to like more of the specifics, but what are you doing ministry-wise with your church? Like talk about Good News Kitchen, the
Sure.
Basic Needs Center.
Sure.
And then I want to jump into the size of your church because I think that's really interesting too. But first, what are you guys doing?
Sure. First of all, I was so attracted when I saw the information on Beyond the Breakwater because I was searching for validation, that we were on the right path. Service is so essential to the church and outreach. So we, as a small church, were trying to figure out how can we serve the community, what assets do we have, and we have an awesome kitchen at our church facility, and it just so happened a ministry in town had a lunch program that was actually operating out of an old travel trailer they had converted into a kitchen. The church that hosted that travel trailer was in the process of closing, so they came and asked if they could park their trailer in our parking lot. And I said, sure, but you may want to look at our kitchen. And that was in 2022, and that's kind of how Good News Kitchen was born. We just welcomed them in and then added to their ministry. They were serving about 75 people a week with lunch, I think, out of the trailer.
Wow.
And now it's grown. We are now serving Tuesday and Thursday lunch from 11 to 1, and we serve 400 to 500 people every
Wow.
single week.
That seems like a fast track from, I mean, 2022 is not,
Not
that
all that
far
far
away.
not all that long ago.
Uh-huh.
Yes, yeah.
Wow.
So,
Okay. And then Good News Kitchen, talk about that. Oh, wait, no, I said the Basic Needs Center.
Sure.
Yeah.
we can probably talk more about Good News
Yes,
Kitchen
yeah.
down the road, but the Basic Needs Center is a new opportunity. It is a food pantry located in downtown St. John's. They also do some clothing for children there as well. They serve about 600 people a month with food, and it's a simple model. There's not a lot of hoops to jump through or qualifications to be met. You can get one large grocery shopping trip a month, and then a supplemental trip with like produce and milk and some perishable things another time during the month.
Okay. And then you were approached by that center to kind of take over
Russ
as president?
and Adele McCoy founded it about 15 years ago. He's a retired pastor in town, retired businessman, and they're getting to the point where they need to slow down a bit in life, and they were looking for someone that would help continue the ministry. It's very much a community ministry. Someone that was passionate about food insecurity and addressing that in our community. And God just blessed us with the opportunity to carry on the great work that they started.
So something, sorry, real quick.
No, can I just clarify?
Sure.
I mean,
Sure.
just for people that are listening. So these are two very separate things.
Two very separate things. Good News Kitchen is a ministry of St. John's Lutheran Church, and the Basic Needs Center is a community ministry. We are just entrusted with stewardship of the Basic Needs Center now.
And one of them, as you said, is part of your church, and the other one's a separate 501c3.
Correct. Yes.
Okay, I
Yes.
think that's really important for people to know. Like, we can go down both of these paths so that people can hear more about what the church is doing, and churches can do that. But then we've also been encouraging and challenging churches that sometimes having a separate 501c3 with a different ministry opens up a whole lot of different doors. So you've got both of them going now, which is amazing.
And it doesn't have to be that complicated. You can make all kinds of different arrangements work if you just keep saying yes. So
That is really important too, to just like continue saying yes, and like prayerfully discerning what to say yes to.
Right.
And something else I heard you say that I want to circle back to, because I think a lot of listeners and people that we've had conversations with are like, we just want the blueprints of what you guys are doing. Like, how did you get to this point? And something I heard you say is like, we looked at like, what assets do we have? Like when you started all of this. And I think that's a really easily transferable thing across any church and ministry, is if you're not doing something, it's like God can use your assets and your passions and your skill sets to intersect all of those and start like somewhere.
Right. To be completely transparent, coming to Beyond the Breakwater can be a little daunting because you all are doing so much. And I feel like you're in the major leagues of service, and I'm kind of in the minor leagues of service. But some of that's based on the size of our town is 9,000 people. We have 140 people that worship with us. But you can't let that keep you from starting. You have to just see what you have. God will open the doors if you express a willingness to go out and serve. So
Can I maybe jump in here? Because
sure.
We've referenced something that you've said. You came to Beyond the Breakwater.
Yes.
Which is usually on a Tuesday.
Right.
And then the following Sunday, so just 5 days later.
My famous quote, I guess.
Yeah, another one.
Quote. I can quote it, but I think I'd rather have you say it, because I have repeated that story countless times with more people. What did you say in the middle of a message?
I said, I have no desire to preside over the funeral of this congregation. And the only way we're going to grow and thrive is to get out of ourselves and serve the community. So
I think we just have to pause there, because I think for a pastor to, in the middle of a message, to say that to the church, that you don't want to preside over the funeral of that church.
Right.
I would imagine everybody's eyes got real big and just like, what did you just say?
Yeah, what was the response to that?
People that were still awake probably
Shock?
maybe a little stunned, yeah.
Uh-huh.
But I typically call it like I see it. You know, I'm not super eloquent, but I do my best to tell the truth every week.
And then what happened? So I would imagine that you probably got a few comments after that message. What did people say? What did you do?
There was a lot of support, but then there's always the one person that says, you know, it's great that you want to feed the poor, but we need to take care of our own. You know, that's when I have to ask the Holy Spirit to help me mind my speech so I don't.
There's a little pause there when you said that.
Practice the pause. Yeah, practice the pause. And count to 3, whatever method you need to not respond in
one, maybe 10.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So you had, I think that's when your team started of the Go Find the One,
yes,
right?
We didn't want to steal your name, Beyond the Breakwater, so we created our Go Find the One core group, referencing you know, the 99, and there are so many ones out there that need reaching out to, and they're all over our community, and we just need to open our eyes and open our ears, and we'll go out and find those ones that are all over the community. So,
Jim, talk a little bit more, because there are people that are listening.
sure.
Their churches are dying.
Right.
I mean, we just heard just a few weeks ago that in the state of Michigan, there's about 100 churches worshiping less than 40 people on a Sunday morning.
Right.
I would imagine that they're finding themselves in a very similar place, dying, not sure they're going to make it.
Right.
And you have a few more in worship than that. But for you to say you're not going to preside over, tell us how did it, like, what did you do, or who said, let's form a group, let's call ourselves by this, Go Find the One. Connect those dots so that maybe a pastor listening can say, I want to do what you did. So what was it that you did?
I knew there were people that were supportive of outreach, and so I just invited a core group together, and we prayed and went through a whole exercise of what are the needs we think that exist in the community, and then we did some checking to make sure that we were on the right track by, you know, we maybe talked to the mayor and the manager at Kroger and the manager at Walmart and some people from like senior apartments and subsidized housing in town, and just to make sure that what we thought were the needs were actually the needs in the community. So I knew there was at least a core group of people ready to get out of what I call navel gazing. I mean, the church was kind of...
Another great
was the church went through, before I arrived, went through about 4 years of interim ministry and some challenges, and they spent a lot of time reflecting on their own problems and their own needs, and when I got there, I decided, you know, it was time to just move on ahead, and God really blessed us. Strangely enough, COVID came. I arrived 5 weeks before COVID did, you know, so that gave us an opportunity to do some resetting and to reprioritize things, and it just seemed like God was calling us to do more and to be more as a church than worry about our own problems and our own finances. There's so much to do, so many people to reach, and they aren't going to stumble into our doors. They just aren't. I mean, that's a reality. We need to go out and find them, and not necessarily, they don't even have to come to church. We just need to introduce them to Jesus and to be his hands and feet in the community. So
Those are incredible words.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Incredible.
So going back to the numbers of things, I'm curious.
Sure.
So, okay, talk about how many staff do you have at your church?
Well, I'm the full-time guy, and then we have a part-time secretary. She works 24 hours a week, and then a bookkeeper, church administrator. She works around 20 hours a week.
Okay, and you said earlier in offline conversation, you preach like 48 Sundays of the year,
basically,
correct?
yeah.
Because you're the only guy, pretty much.
I'm the pastor there, yeah.
Yep.
So that's what.
So there are 3 employees.
Yes.
And
yes.
How many people are you serving a week? You said I know you said it, but say it again.
In terms of the kitchen,
sure, yeah.
Good News Kitchen, we are serving 400 to 500 people a week.
Okay.
With a free lunch, yes.
That's crazy because I think people like look again at like what we're the structure of Messiah and like Beyond the Breakwater stuff, Elevate Community Ministries, all that, and they're like, okay, but you guys have like all of these volunteers and like all of this staff and but it's like that's no justification to not do something. Like you are steering a lot of this. You've had your hand, like you said, you were the cook in the kitchen a lot of the times. So, I mean, you're not a pastor that is sitting in your office 100% of the time. Like you've been dropping off meals to low income apartment complexes. You've been in the kitchen. Like talk about maybe the structure of your week and how you spend your time.
That is a good question. First of all, I'm a pastor, and so I have to take care of our people, and I focus on doing my best to preach well, so that is a significant chunk of time that I spend. But then I just kind of let the Holy Spirit guide the rest of the week. You know, I'll have hospital visits or communion calls, you know, the typical pastor stuff, but I like to do more than that. I like to get involved in the community, see how I can help. I mean, that's kind of my go-to question. You know, how can I help? You know,
Yeah.
And
so,
what did you learn from all those? You said you talked to the mayor,
Yeah,
Kroger manager,
Walmart.
Walmart manager. What did they tell you?
That food insecurity is an issue for sure, but a lot of people kind of have a paralysis, you know, even people that have lived in town for a long time because they don't know where to start and or they aren't really sure, you know, but you have to ask people what they need and how we can help, and then you just have to get rid of any barriers that exist and just keep things as simple as possible. I think in my nonprofit experience, things can get kind of complex. There are a lot of hoops to jump through or forms to fill out or this or that, and you just have to keep it simple. And the best role model for that is Jesus. He didn't give a lot of requirements to heal someone or to feed someone. He just did it, and that's what I want to try to do. Just keep it simple.
So in your expansion of like saying yes and your capacity to serve the community and go out and have these conversations, have you noticed a shift in like your faith at all throughout this process?
Yes, I've noticed, you know, God's blessed me with energy. I'm not young. I'm 64 years old, but I feel like I'm just getting started. And you know, it's kind of a common phrase, but I'd rather burn out than rust out. You know, so you know, so I feel
That's awesome. Burn out than rust out.
I feel like, you know, I have a lot left in the tank, and as long as I have my marbles, I'm going to keep working. You know, so. You know,
that I feel like is also pretty contrary to how people finish out their careers.
Right. Well, I just became a pastor at 59 again, you know, so yeah, God's given me good health and a good amount of energy, and I think there's still a lot of yeses left to be said. To be said.
Yeah. I think that like hearing that in hindsight too is really interesting, because as you're starting ministries and you're thinking about doing stuff like this, it can feel like very overwhelming. And
Right.
if you already feel very like understaffed or under-resourced, and God gives you this idea and like
Right.
this vision to serve, it's like, I think that you're also met with the limitations that you have. And so to hear that you probably, like, again, you are the one guy, like the one pastor, and you have 2 other paid staff with you.
Yes.
I'd imagine you had felt like, we have some limitations here, but your willingness in saying yes, and then hearing that God has sustained you and has given you energy, and like you just keep going one step at a time, like that has a lot of strength to that too.
Right. And I'm not at all strategic. I mean, that isn't one of my gifts. I just...
Here, you and me both.
I just keep saying yes and trusting that God will provide, and He always does. And that isn't something that I've always practiced. I worried a lot, had a lot of anxiety, but in my older years, getting a little wiser, I hope, that if I just say yes, I know God will have my back. You know, God will provide. And I'm not a planner. I'm not a list maker. My wife is excellent with those things. She's an excellent strategic planner. I just kind of fly by the seat of my pants and trust in the Holy Spirit a lot.
Yeah.
So, Jim, take us back to COVID. So everything
Sure.
kind of shut down in COVID.
Yeah.
You had just gotten there 5 weeks before COVID.
Right. February
Okay.
9th of 2020.
Oh, wow. Yeah, like
Yeah.
a
So
month
then-
before.
Yeah.
Yep.
What did that look like after that? So take us to, say, June or July, whenever you started worshiping again. How did the
Well, actually, we were
meal-
only shut down for 2 weeks, and then we started a parking lot service. So,
Oh, really?
yeah. So,
Wow.
That's cool.
yeah, it was really, God really blessed us. Being a small place, we were kind of nimble. We could just had to figure out the technology of getting an FM receiver and, having people just drive up to the parking lot and figure out how to get communion out to the cars and in a safe way.
So talk about the meal ministry then.
Oh,
when did
sure.
that start after COVID, and what did it look like when you first started it?
Actually, Good News Kitchen started not till 2022. His Cup Runneth Over, the organization that morphed into Good News Kitchen, continued
with the trailer.
With the
Okay.
trailer, was seasonal because of it being a travel trailer. So I'm trying to remember the exact month that we started, but like I said, they were serving about 75 lunches when they were operating. I believe it was like April through October.
Okay.
But now we're a year-round meal ministry.
Were you working with them after COVID? Out of the travel trailer or no?
No, they just
Okay.
approached us because the Congregational Church in St. John's was closing, and that's where the trailer
They needed a
lived, in
place
their
to park
parking
it.
lot, and they
Okay.
needed a place to park their trailer, and they were just going to continue on with their ministry as it was, but I saw a possibility with our great kitchen, and it was only the kitchen was only 5 years old and very underutilized, and I knew this was just, God was just giving us an opportunity, and how could I not say yes? Just come on in and make yourself at home, use our stuff, use our kitchen, and we didn't know how it would grow, but and the name Good News Kitchen just kind of came to me naturally. It just seemed like a good name for a kitchen ministry. So yeah.
And that was just 2 years ago. You said 2022, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
It seems like a long time ago. There was a lot of meals that have been served in that time, but yeah, it hasn't been all that long.
What have been the challenges in starting to serve your community and continuing to serve your community?
Well, money is, always a question. I wouldn't say it's a worry because, again, God provides if you're willing to put in the work. It's making sure that you have an adequate volunteer pool, that you don't burn people out, and sometimes not being strategic, I just said, well, people will keep volunteering, and trust that they will. And so far that's worked out, we're careful, not to overload the volunteers and to keep welcoming new ones into the pipeline. So.
Are the volunteers all from your church?
No, not at all.
Okay.
A lot of the Good News Kitchen volunteers are people from different denominations in town. I mean, I imagine there's some that don't go to church, and that's okay too. So
How did that happen? That's really cool. That's kind of one of the things
just kind
that
of
we do too.
rolled out the welcome mat, and anyone's welcome. You don't have to be Lutheran to cook lunch, So, and there are a lot of Tuesdays and Thursdays where there's not a Lutheran to be found in the kitchen. It's people from all different churches in town.
Was there any hesitancy from other churches to want to partner with you guys?
Not really. No.
Okay.
We've just kind of tried our best to be welcoming, not judgy. Everybody's welcome. So.
And how have you communicated that? Like, I'm curious from my job's perspective, but I think that's a question. Like, we had recorded a podcast not too long ago about communications and how you do that. And I think a lot of churches and conversations that I've had with people is they're like, okay, we know how to communicate to our congregation, but how do you even go about making this available or known in the community or to other churches or nonprofits?
Sure. Well, I'm a classic introvert. I don't say a lot typically, but I have a welcoming spirit, and God's just blessed me with that. So people just know that they're welcomed, and I do my best to appreciate the heck out of our volunteers, thank them often, and I just think that more and more churches, if we are more welcoming, and we're all in this together, we're all in the boat together, and I feel really strongly like God has put it on my heart. There, in recent years, there have been so many Christians that have acted like jerks. I feel like I need to correct that, and to let people know that Christians aren't judgy. They aren't just my way or the highway. As followers of Jesus, we have to follow him, be accepting and warm and encouraging. And if people are broken, we need to do what we can to heal them. So.
Yeah.
Jim, I think it's amazing, though, that you created an atmosphere where people felt welcome for wherever they are. I mean, I just came from a community meeting this week that didn't go quite the way you're talking about because they're staking out their turf,
right,
and feeling like they can't participate in anybody else's stuff, even if it's for the sake of the community. That they're almost like, no, if we're doing it, we have to put I heard this. If we're doing it, we have to put our name on it. That matters to them, instead of what they're trying to accomplish is putting their name on it. So it seems like you've done the opposite of just saying, hey, you're welcome, and come and serve.
I honestly don't worry about turf. I worry about following Jesus and encouraging others to do the same. And it works for me. I mean, that's it works for me.
So how many volunteers would you say are participating in Good News Kitchen?
I would say on average 15 to 20 a week.
Wow.
Yes.
And they're coming from all over.
Yes. We have kitchen managers that do an awesome job, and they kind of have assembled their crews of volunteers, but then new faces pop up constantly, or some are snowbirds and might go away for the winter. And so we have to fill in. But people have really responded well. And then one of the kind of little perks, every meal has a homemade cookie. So we have a lot of cookie bakers that, bake 4 dozen, 10 dozen, whatever cookies, and drop them off at the church. And so, again, they're from throughout the community. I bet there's 30, 40 cookie bakers that are in a rotation of baking cookies. And it's kind of neat that that you get a fresh baked cookie, made with love in your lunch every single lunch. Yeah.
From an interaction standpoint, are and people are coming, they're receiving meals, they're eating their lunches there.
No.
Or they take it to go?
They take it to go,
Okay.
or a lot of them are delivered.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So it's not, okay. I was curious.
They're welcome to eat at the church. It just hasn't happened that way.
Okay. So the interaction standpoint doesn't come from them sitting and having their meal there. The interaction point is from them receiving the food from a volunteer
from
that
the
serves
kitchen
them.
staff, or it could be from the delivery person. It's a smile. It's a friendly face. It's someone that cares.
And I'm assuming
about them.
you've seen a lot of repeat people, like you've built relationships
for sure.
with people.
There are some regulars, and some will chat up the kitchen staff, and they just need that human interaction, which is that's a blessing in itself.
Yeah.
So is it more of a drive-through?
No, it's a walk on in. I mean,
okay, so everybody walks in.
Yeah, we have a few different couples and individuals that deliver meals. So they deliver. The nice thing about being in a small town, it doesn't take long to get around on a delivery route, and like 30 meals will go to the local apartment complex, and then 20 some go to a senior apartment complex in downtown St. John. So it doesn't take long to add up numbers when you're talking 30 and 20 or 50 getting delivered to houses around town. So
it's still a lot.
It is a lot. But then we have a lot of people that just walk in, and they might need one lunch, or they might need a few lunches, or some lunches go to other nonprofit organizations for their volunteers that are volunteering on those lunch days. So to bless them with a lunch.
I'm glad you're clarifying, because I was thinking this is like in
Everybody
a big room.
Sit down and
Everybody's
at a
sitting
dining
down
hall.
and having a lunch
Yeah.
together.
I did too.
And community.
It's not like a soup kitchen in the sense that they come and eat there. It's just lunch. You come and get lunch if you want it, or we'll bring it to you. And
So I have a question that might
Sure.
put you on the spot, and then
That's
I'll
all
yap
right.
for a little bit,
That's
so
all
it
right.
gives you time to think.
Okay.
But I'm curious if you have any like stories. Like, do you have any favorite stories of people that you've had continued interactions with and built relationships over time of just like life transformation that you've had the pleasure of just hearing their story over time? Because I think like we've talked about this piece of this like ladder of you have the interaction to then connection and relationship, and then someone coming to Christ maybe, and it takes like a large base of interactions to reach that point. And we've said this on the podcast before, but ministry happens at the speed of relationship. And so when you are engaging with someone and constantly interacting with them, I think the Lord can use that over time. And so not even stories of like, you don't have to share a coming to faith story, but even just like, I have the pleasure of interacting with this person and like sharing life with them that I never would have had the chance to do if we were like a church that was internally serving like our own.
Sure.
Hopefully that gave you enough time.
One simple example is, again, St. John's is a small town. It's 9,000 people. So one day I was just doing our own personal grocery shopping at Kroger, and a gentleman came up to me and said, "Hey, Pastor Jim, I really like the chicken tetrazzini you made, for the meal that you cooked." And just simple interactions like that wouldn't occur had I not been involved in Good News Kitchen. And now when we see each other, we chat and catch up. And he isn't a church member. He doesn't go to our church, but we have a connection. I care about him. He is interested in supporting Good News Kitchen in whatever way he can. Other people that have come for lunch have actually morphed into volunteers or cookie bakers.
Oh, that's cool.
Because it isn't, you can be a millionaire and come and get a lunch. You don't have to be poor. I mean, that isn't the model that we have. It's just lunch. Just come, and it's just hospitality, and that's what I feel really strongly about. The church needs to be more hospitable. So.
And like, it's okay to like have an interaction with someone and
Sure.
and just love them and hear what's going on in their life.
I see kitchen helpers and managers praying with people. People will feel comfortable enough calling the church office and getting on our church's prayer list, even though they don't go to our church, and that to me is a victory. I mean, that breaks down barriers and walls. We can all pray. We just have to keep praying. And so.
Can I highlight something?
Sure.
I'm just piggybacking on what you said.
Sure.
Because even with this person that you mentioned, it started with some kind of an interaction of him with the ministry, but then it went to a connection that he established with you that seemed to go next to a relationship. But then when you jumped and you talked about others that are praying with people or getting on the prayer list, that's that top rung of that spiritual conversation, or can I pray with you, or can I really care for you because it's a time that their life just fell apart.
Right.
So I think you're just, I don't want anybody to miss. That is exactly the model, and that's why your church, this is why other churches need to be in their communities and doing all of this work so that you have that chance to, we're there when life happens and you can pray with someone and have that conversation. That's amazing, Jim. That's amazing.
That's why the Beyond the Breakwater model is so important, because we can't just sit in the harbor, and expect people to hop on our boat. It's not going to happen. We have to go out and find them. God is calling us to serve. Every single Christian is called to serve. I'm absolutely convinced of that. We spend a lot of time worrying about worship or worship styles, or do you like traditional music or contemporary music? That those things are important, but that's not the central thing about our faith. Our faith is a faith that is meant to get out there and to serve. Look at Jesus. He spent more time serving than he did preaching, and more time serving than he did teaching, more time healing and feeding people. And so if we want to be good Christ followers, we should do what Jesus did: go out and find the lost and heal the hurting, feed the hungry. It's not that complicated, but we sure make it awfully complicated at times. So
that was beautiful.
I think we should end with that.
Yeah.
Because I think that was absolutely amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I hope everybody replays what you just said over and over and over again, Jim, because I think you hit the nail on the head. And everybody needs to hear what you just said. Yeah. So thank you. Thank you for being a guest with us today.
Thank you. My pleasure.
And we're going to continue the conversation. So we'll see everybody next week.
Thanks for tuning in to this week's episode of Beyond the Breakwater, a podcast of Elevate Community Ministries. Don't let the conversation stop here. You can email us at hello@beyondthebreakwater.org. We would love to chat with you, answer questions, plan a visit, and help you take your next step. We'll see you next week.